Here we see a bike helmet. It's just a regular item. It has 35 quantity on hand, none is allocated, and so we can promise up to 35. So first customer calls up and says that they want bicycle helmets. So that's Loose Nuts Bicycles, just a small bicycle shop. They call us up, we create an order, we ask them how many they want, they say they want 22. So let's go ahead and add that to our order, 22, and hit save. Now what we're doing here is we're going to talk about soft allocation. So I'm going to go back to the bike helmet and I'm going to look and see what happened after creating that order. Okay, so it says that there are 22 allocated quantity. That happens automatically when you create an order line. And so the available promise is actually 13. The next customer calls up and they say, okay, REI, much bigger customer, they say, I want all of your bike helmets. Okay, and the sales guy, even though he goes to the bike helmet and sees that he can promise 13, he tells them that they actually has 35. So this is going to be a rob Peter to pay Paul scenario where the sales guy says, REI is a very, very important customer. We need to go ahead and ship those 35 out now. And our Loose Nuts Bicycle customer is going to have to wait until the next batch. So sales guys asked the operations team to go ahead and pack this order. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm just going to click pack and I'm just going to do a regular pack out. We've all seen this before and we're going to see what happens. So now if I go back to the bike helmet, we see that there's a 22 allocated quantity from Loose Nuts Bicycles and the available promise is actually negative. Okay, so let's go ahead and receive a purchase order to get more inventory in. I know of a purchase order that's already out there. It has 35 here, so I'm going to go ahead and receive this first purchase order line to get inventory into the system. And this next time that we do this, we're actually going to show what happens when you use hard allocation. So we just saw what happens when you use soft allocation. So after I receive this PO, we're going to have 35 back in stock and we're going to be back to where we were before. Just to confirm, let's go back to the bike helmet. And here we are. So there's 35 quantity on hand, 22 allocated quantity, and those 22 are from this order from Loose Nuts Bicycles. Now, again, the sales guy calls up and he sees, the sales guy from before from REI, he says, oh, look, we have 35 in stock. And so REI calls up and says, okay, we want all 35 again. So we create an order and we add 35. All right, so at this very moment, we're back to where we were before, where there are two customers who need inventory, the same inventory, and one customer had their order put in first, and the other customer put their order in second. So on this first order, if we were using hard allocation, which is the opposite of what we just talked about, we were actually going to allocate the order. So there's an extra step for an order after it's placed, and that step can happen automatically or it can happen via clicking a button. I'm going to show you how it works with clicking this button here, allocate order. And behind this button, there are a number of different inventory models. And an inventory model is something where it says, do I want to do first in, first out? Do I want to do first expiration, first out? Do I want to pick the inventory with the biggest amount of inventory in it? There's a multiple different kinds of allocation models. This is going to choose the one that we have set at the org level, and it's just going to smartly allocate the order. So when I'm going to go ahead and click allocate order, and here what we're going to see is that we end up with allocation lines. So here, if you scroll or hover over this allocation lines, you can see that I've actually allocated 22, all 22 of this order to this particular piece of inventory. Now, what this means is that no one else can get this inventory. It basically secures the inventory for the specific customer, for the specific order, so no one else can get it. And if we were to go over to the REI order, and since we've already done that allocation, let's go ahead and see what happens when we allocate on the REI order. Now we know that we don't have enough inventory for it, so we're going to have a problem here. But let's go ahead and do it. So I click allocate order on this one. And what ends up happening is we have an allocation line as well for this one, but this time the REI order only got 13 because we had 35 in stock. 22 of them were given to the Loose Nets Bicycles on their allocation line, so they only get 13 on this one. And we get an additional record here, a back order line for 22. Okay, so now we got two separate records here. So if we go back to Loose Nuts Bicycles, the only thing you really have to do now that you have the allocation line, like we discussed, is you have to actually pack the allocated order. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. It's just doing what the allocation line already said, and now the order is closed. And so we go ahead and get a regular pack sales order line like we're used to, and we're actually gonna go back to the bike helmet, and I'm gonna give it a little refresh here. And what we're gonna see is that we have 13 quantity on hand, and we have a quantity issue of negative 22. So how do we fix that? We're going to go back to the purchase order that we previously went to, and we're going to receive that additional 35. Okay. And so the reason why we're going to do this is because we're actually going to be able to pack the entire order for REI. So I'm going to go back to that order. And remember, this is the order with 35 needed, but the allocated quantity is 13 and the back ordered quantity is 22. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pack the allocations. So when I do that, it's actually going to pack that 13. It's going to say partially complete. That allocation line is going to be packed, and we're going to get a pack sales order line here. So we end up with the allocation line is 13. Its quantity left to pack is 0 here, as you can see, and our pack sales order line is for 13. Well, we still have this back ordered line of 22. And we know that we have the inventory we just received from the purchase order. So we can go ahead and allocate this order a second time. And what that's going to do is it's going to allocate that 22 back order line and go ahead and close it out and give us a second allocation line. So here you can see the back order line that we previously saw was 22 is now allocated, and we get that second allocation line there for 22. And to go ahead and close the loop on this whole thing is we can go ahead and pack the remaining allocation line. So you can see how this sort of more rigid solution for creating an allocation line for the amount that you can. So with a smart inventory model, and then you can also have a back order get created, and then you can come back, and when that back order can get allocated, this is a very rigid system where orders won't get lost and inventory won't get lost, and we won't have any robbing Peter to pay Paul.